Welcome back, gearheads, to part 3. Cutting a long bed down to a short bed on our 2001 Chevy truck known as the Vandal project. We'll start out by walking around, showing where we're at now and where we plan to be going and what we're trying to figure out. Last week I stopped off showing you I had the frame cut in half, had the ends cleaned up, ready to slip it back together for test fitting and measuring and seeing where we're at. And that's where we're at right now. We've slipped it together. We're trying to start taking measurements, see where it's at, see how close we are and what we may need to adjust and where we're going from there. So let's go in here and look. This is what she's looking like right now. It's slipped in together. Got a tape measure, ran across there for now. I know that it's not slipped in all the way, because the first test fit I found, see this material in here? All right, in here, there's an extra layer of material in there. It goes all the way to the end where we cut it. I'll pull the frame apart in a minute and show you more. Split to that here actually. Let me just cut to that clip and show you what we had to do there. After the first test fit, this is what we have, what we found. First, here's a couple things you can do to make sure to avoid having to readjust like I am now. One is make sure these gaps are spread open, top and bottom. I used the, what do you call it? Chisel. I'm gonna hammer the chisel in there, open them up some more. We had them opened up a little bit, but just go ahead and over open them, make them big enough so it's not pinching down on it. Also this lip up here too, the whole lip, just peel it up some because it was pinching on the frame when we tried to slide them together. Once we got past that, you know, I just chiseled them while they were on the frame. Once we got past that, we got to a point to where it wouldn't go anymore. It wouldn't go in anymore. And of course, something I forgot to go back and look at, but if you look inside the frame, there's some type of a, I don't know, reinforcement bracket that runs all the way down the frame. But look how far in there it is. That rear of the frame that we're trying to shove in here is trying to go inside here, but yet that piece of metal is in the way, bottom and top. So we need to clearance that about an inch so that we can slide in at least an inch. You know, clear it more than we need. The frame over here slides in inside of that one a little bit more than an inch. So we cut back enough, so what we're going to do is cut back enough top and bottom so that it doesn't stop the frame from sliding in anymore. Same on both sides. See it over here? Top and bottom. So we're going to clearance that and then try to put it back together again. Two things, as I test fit that rear portion of the frame, I noticed the circle, the tube, that cross member that goes inside the frame was rubbing on both sides a little bit. So I went ahead and took the grinder and trimmed it back a little bit on both ends. But the main thing that was stopping us was these pieces here, and I didn't have much of an idea of how I was going to trim that back. The only thing, the best tool I could come up with without cutting the frame was my straight grinder. With a little bitty burr on the end. So I used that, got in there, ground a line across of it, went about halfway deep, and once I had it about halfway cut through, I came in with the chisel and a hammer and knocked the pieces out like this. That's bottom and on the top and both sides of the frame. Something here that I'd like to note is this reinforcement bracket on the inside of the frame. So the hanger, these are the bolt holes for the hanger on the outside of the frame. But they've put another plate in here and welded it in from the factory GM to reinforce that wall for the leaf spring hanger, the front leaf spring hanger up here. And I never heard anybody mention that, or I hadn't seen people mention that whenever, because we have to, now that we're cutting 14 inches out, this is all going to move 14 inches forward. And there's no extra plate up there. I hadn't seen anybody mention that before or add another plate there. So I may add some type of plate, may not, I don't know. But I just thought I'd bring that up. You can show that they put it there to strengthen it. And there's nothing up here where most people usually move it to and don't mention adding another plate. So I guess they haven't had problems. Maybe even you could just box the frame in to help strengthen it all together, or just weld a plate to the back of it like they did here. I just wanted to show that to y'all. But we got those pieces trimmed back over an inch, which should be plenty of room for the frame to slide in now. So we're test fitting again. A couple lessons that I learned, take note so you learn for yourself before you start this project. One thing is, when I watched the Power Nation video, I saw they took the receiver hitch off. I'm like, why the heck did they take that thing off? I'm just gonna leave it on there. That might even help keep the frame more true and square. I'm just gonna leave it on there. No, you take it off for two reasons. One, because it makes the thing heavy as heck when you're trying to pick it up by yourself and slip it back in, which is what I had to do. It's off balance, it starts pulling this way and you drop it. I did drop it. That's one reason why you take it off. Second reason why you take it off is you can't get these bolts out because it hits the hitch on the inside there. Not sure if you can see that, but trust me, these bolts don't come out. As you see, we were still able to get the springs off by coming off the top, but it'd be a nice option to be able to take that off that way. In other words, just remove the hitch, save yourself the hassle. Another note I think that would have helped me out throughout the whole last video, part 2 of cutting this frame, you see us dancing around this brake line. Just dancing around it. Keep it going over, under it, and around it. It's in the way. Got a drip pan down there catching the crap. What I probably should have done is go up just a little bit further under the cab, and there's an ABS module under there. I don't know if we could see it from here, but there's an ABS module where more than likely you can just unscrew it. I didn't try it, but I'm taking a guess. You can just unscrew it from down there, put your drip pan down there out of the way. That's what I should have done. There's two things to help you out so you don't have to deal with that I had to deal with. Back to where I was. Frame is slipped in, and it's not exactly where we need it yet. I knew it wouldn't be, but I went ahead and threw a tape measure down just to check. You see here we have room. Move this tape measure out of the way. We have room there for the frame to slide in some more, but I couldn't get the frame to go in anymore. And what I figure here is it's a little tight on the bottom side. See if you can see that. It's a little tight on the bottom side. So what I'm going to do now is pull the back end back out and open up this section right here, grind it out some more, and that should give us some room to slide it back in. But just out of curiosity, I want to see how close my measurements are. I have to set the tape measure back up. Wind blew it down. Hey, y'all hear the birds out there? They are singing a chant. motivating me along, trying to get me to get this project done. Actually, you know, that might not be what they're doing. They might not be singing to me at all. I think they're mad at me because they keep making a bird's nest in there. Only had the bed off for a couple days and they made a bird's nest in there, right inside of where I'm cutting. Then I come back, cleaned it all out, cut the frame in half, put the frame back together. I come back 2 days later, another freaking bird's nest in there. So I guess those sweet, lovely sounds we hear are not really sweet and lovely. They're like, screw you, dude. You just took my home. I guess that's what that translates to. I'm gonna have to get a translator to make sure. All right, back on subject. People may wonder how I'm keeping it square, how I'm planning on. Everybody's concerned about having a crooked frame. How are you going to keep it straight? What are you going to do? You don't have a jig. You don't know what you're doing. I don't care. I think that there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I don't think you have to have a jig. Jigs are nice. That would be helpful. What I chose to do, my mindset is to make as many measurements as possible that I could think of, that I could recheck once I put this back together. Those measurements that I did, like I said in my last video, part 2, I'm no expert. I'm new to this, and this is the first one I've ever shortened. But I'm pretty sure that what I'm about to do is going to work like a champ, and we'll see that when I'm doing burnouts in it this year, next year, and the year after the turbo gets on and everything else we do with it. No matter what, like I said, it's metal. We can fix it. It's gonna be good. Watch. Okay, so to give you the idea of the measurements that I did, the routes that I chose to try to make sure everything is true. First of all, I made sure the cab didn't move. Made sure the cab is on 4 jack stands. It's stable under there and it's not moving. So I knew that angle would not change. You cut the back part of the frame off, that's going to change. That's okay. That's how we're going to line things back up. Since we're starting with angles, we'll start with that. I used a digital angle finder. I have a digital angle finder. I got it because I'm building the custom 8.8 rear ends for the F-body. Hi Camaro. Everybody asks where the Camaro is and how it's doing. There it is. That's how it's doing. It's over there just crying, waiting for me to finish it, and it's close. It's actually hurting me to look at it. I want to get it done. This has to get done first so that bed can get out of my parents' driveway. Can't have it here. It's not good for this neighborhood. We'll get this job done quickly. I'm bouncing around all kinds of subjects today. That's what caffeine will do to you, boys and girls. Okay. I made sure the frame for the cab section of the frame stayed stable. And what I did is I took my digital meter, bam, digital angle finding meter, digital angle finder, digital, however you want to word it. That's it right there, and that's what I'm using. I think they're about 35 bucks at Sears, but I needed it for building rear ends. Figure it'd be a useful tool. Coincidentally, since I have it, why not go ahead and check the angles of my frame here? I'm not on level ground, and I wasn't worried about it. I mean, I tried to get on as much level ground as I could, but you work with what you got. I'm in a driveway. The reason I say I don't think it matters that much, if you're not on level ground, what you do is you try to get the jack on jack stands as level as you can, and the rear supported as level as you can. Get everything very level. I made sure that the 4 jack stands under the cab supported most of the weight, and then just barely set it down on these rear jack stands. That way when I cut the frame here, the cab wasn't going to go flipping forward or backwards. Make sure those are spread out. We got it pretty much the rearward most before the curve starts on the frame, and then 2 up there near the front under the engine. So pretty much I could have just left it without these jack stands on, almost. That's supporting all the weight. Cut it off and it stays stable. If that stays stable, not only does it not flip off and roll over, but the angle here should stay basically the same. So before we cut the frame, I came through with my digital angle finder, and actually that's in my way, but I can go to the edge here. Probably being near the edge is a good thing. Came in with my angle finder, laid it on the frame, and measured the angle. 2.3 degrees is exactly what I had before I cut the frame. That's what I have here. Something was shaped a little bit different on that frame, have a different angle, that's fine. Now the reason I say this doesn't matter is because, say you want a perfect zero. Ideally, technically, I guess, sounds beautiful to say you have zero. But what does it really matter? You can add and subtract if your angles change. If your ground is at a 45-degree angle and you're on jack stands, sounds dangerous, but you can always calculate to make sure that you have the correct angle for the rear half when it comes back in. In my situation, it doesn't matter that much. I got 2.3, I'm not sure what I said earlier, 23, but it's 2.3 degrees, right? I slipped my frame back into it, knowing that I still need to make more adjustments, but before, I also wanted to see how far off I was on my actual measurements with the tape measure, so I stuck my meter on, also put it in the same spot. Where did I have it? I think it was here. That's my measuring line for my tape measure, so we use that. So right now I'm pretty dang close already at 2.4. I could probably weld it there and it wouldn't matter, but I'm gonna do my best to get that at 2.3 degrees. Because the back of the frame was at 2.3, front of the frame was at 2.3. Gives you an idea what you need to do. If you got your base measurements before you cut, say the cab moves, and this angle now is a different degree. You still know what the differences were and what they're supposed to be. So you can calculate those differences in and get the frame straight. That's probably getting way more deeper than you need to. More than likely, none of that even matters, and you can just weld it back together. Just get it straight. It's kind of funny how just slipping it back into the other frame made it pretty much straight. Because I haven't even really tried to straighten the frame out yet. Over here I had 1.9, I believe. Yeah, look at that, we're around 1.9. And at first it confused me. I'm like, why is it different over here? But I think it's just the contour of the frame over here. Something's different. But at least I know it didn't move. It stayed the same over here. Look, now we're showing 2.0, but I'm telling you, it's 1.9. There you go. Now back here on this corner, I believe I measured about here, and we had 2.3 before cutting. 2.4 is pretty close. I could weld it up like that. I bet it'd be fine. But I'm not ready to weld yet. All I'm doing right now, I wanted to see how close my angles were, so that way I can take my tape measure out and see how close my measurements are. Just all a pre-check. It doesn't hurt to measure. What do they say? Measure twice, cut once. I'm measuring like 5 times and then cutting. I'm about to measure, even though I know I still need to take the frame in some more. So there's one way. Checked my angles. I figured as many different ways as you can measure how you're doing your frame, the better. I checked my angles. That's one way. Now let me show you the next way. What I did is found solid points. You can pick them anywhere on the frame that are not going to move and be easy to measure from, so that you can measure again once you cut the frame. I used an ink pen to write things down. So what I did, since I'm doing things myself and it's hard to hold tape measure still, I made sure to use the same tape measure because they're different widths. I just hooked my tape measure here, drew the line. Not that I needed to, but that's my first measuring point. Hooked my tape measure in, and before I cut the frame, also make sure it's pushed all the way down. Before I cut the frame, I measured all the way back to the front. Hold on, tape measure sliding forward on me. Lock it in, push it down. Lock it in, push it down, give it a tug, make sure I got all the slack out of that tip. You know how those tips like to adjust. And then I measured to that arrow, to that line, right about there. Get back so you can see. When I measured to that line before cutting the frame, I wrote it down, 76.25 inches. All right, so you subtract your 14 inches that we're removing from the frame. What does that get us? 62.25. All right, 62, say 10, yeah, 62.25 sounds right. Of course, while you're holding the camera and talking, it's hard to calculate. Oh, tape measure, quit moving on me. You don't want to play today. So we should have 62 1/4 with the 14 inches removed, right? Yes, it is at an angle, because that's how the mounts go. But it'll be fine. Right now we're at a little bit over 62 1/2, which I expected to see. We need a little bit more than a 1/4 inch taken out of there. I expected to see that because we're not all the way in the frame yet. Get that cleared out there. I'm pretty sure the frame's going to knock the rest of the way in where I want it. So I did this measurement on this side. I measured it the same way on that side from the same mounting. First bed mount through the hole there. Then what I also did is measured crosswise. Hook it in over here. Drop my tape measure since I'm using one hand. This is lovely. Before I actually take that measurement though, I like to make sure, man, maybe I should have just set up a tripod. Oh, maybe like that one right there. Set up a tripod so you can see. You wouldn't have a shaky camera. I wanted y'all to have a close-up though of what I'm doing. But I did the same on the side. I went straight back and measured to this line over here. Be careful not to wipe off your paint marks, but I believe that said 76 1/4 as well, just like the other side. I remember them being the same. Then I also measured crosswise to the same mark. You have a line going across, and I did a center line. I didn't do this calculation before camera, so y'all not gonna put me on a math quiz right now. So beforehand though, before I cut the 14 inches out, we had 87.5. I'm not working out no math at a diagonal cut, subtracting 14 inches right now. But my point is though, it gives you points of reference. I guess what I could do is I can measure, I could see what the difference here is. What we got, 87.5. 87.5. So what that tells us, it should be square. It should be the same measurement after 14 inches from whatever I get from that corner to that corner. From this corner to this corner should be the same measurements. Even without any type of calculations, it should be even. So those are the routes that I chose. That's the options that I used. Like I said, I'm not experienced with this. I just chose anything that I could. The more ways I could get measurements, the better. Maybe I overdid it. I don't know. I figured it's just a measurement. I could take it, write it down. It may come in handy, may come in helpful. It's better than chopping the frame in half and going back being, dang, what was that? What was that measurement? What was I supposed to do? At least I got some written down on paper to reference to if I need to. Same thing for the hangers, because I'm not using short bed hangers because I don't have any. So you need to have an idea of how low did that hanger hang. Find you a measuring point. Measure from there to the ground, say, if your ground's flat. So that way you know when you stick it over here how high up it is. Because this is going to be the point to where if you're lifting your truck, you could go lower. And if you're raising it, you can go higher. Put the camera where you can see. What I'm going to have to do more than likely, because the short bed front hangers, this front side here, is more straight up and down, so it kind of mounts like that, but it would still be straight. I'm probably going to have to modify this to fit correctly once I get some measurements in. And what I'm going to do is actually raise it up on the frame some so I can get, well, as much as I can and still clear the bolt on the back side. But I'll just raise it up on the frame some to get a drop, a free drop pretty much. Sticks up too high, cut the top off, maybe reinforce it. I don't really know. Actually, I haven't even put much thought into the plan of how I'm going to do that. But that's the general idea of the direction that I'm heading. Normally, when this is on the frame here, this piece down here from the factory supports the back side of it. It comes from the bottom, it supports the back side. So, depending on how low I'm hanging after I modify the hanger, we'll see if we need to make any supports. It looks like it's probably going to be high enough where I might not need a support. Then we'll also see what decision I make if I'm going to reinforce the backside, if I'm going to box it in or just weld a plate there to reinforce the wall like they did from the factory. There's just a plate there, thickening the wall so it doesn't crack or whatever, reinforcing it. I haven't seen anybody complain about needing any more reinforcement, but when you see a factory do it, it makes you want to do it too. That's it. That's where I'm starting the day off today. It's Monday. I'm back at it. I want to get this truck slapped back together, but I need to slow down. You know, we try to rush. We want to hurry up and do a burnout. We try to rush. I'm not going to have a lot of time this week. I've got about 2 days to work on this to get as far as I can get. We'll see how far I can get this video up to you, so at least you get a little bit of progress. But once I get back next week, we'll be hitting it hard, and it shouldn't take very much longer to get this finished. Here's where we're at. As y'all saw overhead, as a fast forward, we slid the frame, we pulled it out, made some clearances. I had to open up that gap I showed earlier at the bottom here, made some clearances, wiped off the material, tried to degrease it because it comes with a coating of some type of tar, rubbery coating, but trying to get it ready to weld if it did go back together correctly. So we slid it back in. One way to help push it in, we were hitting the end, put a piece of wood over the end of it, of the hitch, and hit it with the BFH hammer, big freaking hammer, to tap it forward, tap it towards the front. Same time though, we don't want to knock it off the jack stands. So we tapped it to help us out with the tapping and the moving forward. Lamar, my stepdad Lamar, he came out here and helped me. He said, how about a ratchet strap? It's like, man, that's a great idea. So we secured a ratchet strap where it's it's pulling straight, it's not pulling at a level. You know, could have gone back to the hitch or something, but this is actually even here. So put a ratchet strap on the cab side of the frame to the piece that we're pulling in. That's the piece that we're pulling in. Ratchet strapped them together, tightened it up, and that helped us to pull it in. Actually, after we got some tension on the ratchet strap, we were able to just tap, vibrate the side of the frame, and it would pull it into where it needed it. So we did that, got it to where it looked good, made measurements, tapped it, adjusted it again, probably measured 20 times at least, measured lengthwise and crosswise, got it all straight, used the angle gauge, measured the angle looks good, everything looks right. I'm trying to think of any other way I can check to make sure that I've got it set right before I start tack welding it in. Main thing that I could think of was the fuel tank. The reason the fuel tank's in there is not to drive it, it's to test fit, because if you look at the fuel tank, you'll see the cross members run through the fuel tank. This side, you have some clearance on both sides of the, well, you can't see under that pipe, but there's clearance, there's some room around that cross member on the fuel tank. But on this one, it's a snug fit. So that's one way. If you put the fuel tank in and it doesn't fit, that means you didn't move the rear part of the frame forward enough. So that definitely tells me one thing. You know, I wish the rear end was in there already. I could put the drive shaft in and see how it fit and all. But there's no other way for me really to check that I got the length right and got everything right. As long as I know that I cut the 14 inches out, which I did. I also know that it has moved forward 14 inches from my measurements that I made in areas where I wasn't cutting. Measuring from there to there. Fuel tank fits. As far as I can tell, everything is good. Everything looks right. So it's time for me to go ahead, tack them in place, get the fuel tank back out of there, and figure out how I'm going to make these long bed hangers work. It doesn't look like it's going to be too hard. I may have to modify them, and also I would like to move them up. Normally they would be about here. Now I need to measure and move them forward 14 inches, somewhere around here. It's going to come close to hitting that front bed mount. But when I do that, I'm going to raise them up as much as I can and still have clearance to get that bolt out for the leaf spring bushing. But I may have to cut the top off to make sure they clear the bed. We'll see. That's next on my list to figure out. Let me get some measurements though and see how far forward I got to move it first. That's where we're at. Looking good so far. Hey, if you've got any thoughts or ideas, post them in the comments below. If you've done this before, share your experience. Tell others. Let others learn from the comments they read below this. I mean, they might catch something from the video, but they might learn a lot more from something you say from your experience. Maybe you've done this a lot of times. Even if it's a different type of frame, C10, whatever advice you got, share it below and tell us about it. If you like what I'm doing and you want to see more, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below this video. I thank you all for your support. Remember, be productive and keep on wrenching.